And we're live, I think. Good evening. My name is John with Broadsheet. Welcome to Tomorrow Tonight. We're joined by public affairs consultant and political columnist with Broadsheet, Derek Mooney. Good evening, Derek.
Hello, John. How are you? Well,
very well, very well. You had a column today, Derek, concerning Micheál Martin and the North and their response to COVID. We'll get to that after we do the papers. Will we go straight into the papers now, Derek? Yeah?
Yep, no problem at all, yep.
Perfect, okay. We'll go straight in and yeah, you crack away. We'll go down from the Examiner.
Yeah, no, again, which is I think the Examiner consistently has had excellent coverage of COVID, and Diana McConnell has had exceptionally accurate coverage of the Fianna Fáil parliamentary parties. But I mean, just in terms of for the last couple of months, the Examiner has been consistently very tight on this and really good. So we see, like, again, lockdown to be extended to March the 5th, which I don't think that'll come as a major shock to anyone. I think people will be hoping that there'll be some step down in March the 5th. I wouldn't be betting on it, but I mean, I think most people had accepted or had anticipated that this will go through February. But I mean, it has to be so difficult for so many people, not just people on furloughs or people who are on PUP, but for young people in particular. And I just think just that the stress, strain and difficulty of this is just incredible.
How are you regarding the message, how it's been delivered between Varadkar Donnelly and Micheál Martin?
I try to think who made the point today. Actually, that in terms of, look, the messaging has been very, very sparse, and the fact that it's spread over 3 people is not helping. I think you just need to kind of tighten the message down to one person with others coming in to echo it. And what's happening is that oftentimes you get, if it was even down to just those 3 people, it'd be fine. But you often have then Minister Harris giving his to Hapensworth, etc., at various times, and you've seen not massive differences, but just differences of emphasis, and maybe kind of the Taoiseach says something, then the Taoiseach to come in to expand on one point, etc. And it does lead to a wee bit of confusion. I think the message needs to be more centrally controlled.
Like
and then on top of that, you have Neppert giving a press conference every 6 o'clock every evening. So it's you would have thought this far into it that they would have sorted out a better system and a more consistency. And again, and I know we'll talk about my column later, which is I don't think the Taoiseach going on and giving a 50-minute rambling interview on a Saturday afternoon adds to that overall messaging. He didn't say much. He didn't say a huge amount that was wrong, but the little things he did say really just detracted from the overall message.
We'll get to that. That was on Radio 1, wasn't it? The Brendan O'Connor show on Saturdays.
Yeah, it was about Brendan O'Connor, yeah.
Great photo of Alice Taylor at her window box in Inishannon, County Cork.
Yeah. Again, which is, again, like, I mean, just in terms of, like, I mean, everyone has been hit by this. Like, I lost an aunt early last year to COVID-19. And so and it's just the idea that you couldn't go to the funeral, you can't see other relations, you can't see other relatives. It's just really drawing it down. I think there's a mention about 2/3 of the way through the story from the Examiner, but I'm sure other papers will have it as well, about what's happening in Europe with the AstraZeneca vaccine, and that the European Commission is basically now getting into a standoff battle with AstraZeneca, saying that look, that we're not going to allow you export outside the EU when we've pre-bought, I can't remember, it's like 400 doses or 400 million doses or whatever of AstraZeneca. Have been told, listen, we're not going to be able to deliver that. We'll only be able to deliver half of what we promised you in the first 3 months.
Okay.
So that's that, and look, the issue of the rollout of the vaccine is very much down to the kind of the supply and the continuity of supply.
Okay.
So I think we're going to see just later in this week just a further standoff between AstraZeneca and the European Commission. And that has massive ramifications for us here, because AstraZeneca is a large chunk of what we intend to be getting.
Right. Okay. Okay. 3 shares customer data to track COVID
Uh,
compliance. Mobile phone carrier 3. Did you get that, Derek?
yeah,
Uh,
yeah. This is like kind of just a data culture, but like I mean, look, there are data protection issues about a lot of this, etc. But I think in terms of, I think people will be a lot more tolerant, a lot more understanding of why this has been done. So it's basically saying that the tree is providing the aggregated movement data of its 2.4 million customers to the department, etc. I assume if they say aggregated, that means that it will be anonymized, and therefore it's to get patterns rather than to track down individuals. But I just trying to read through the story now, and I'm not seeing that absolutely clear.
okay.
But I think
Yeah.
it just says only aggregated statistical data is provided to the Department of Health. No personal data is supplied, the spokesperson said. So that's to get trends and patterns rather than to track down individuals. And I think that the data can be handed over in such a way that it does not allow to the identification of anyone.
Okay. Okay. The Echo meat plant outbreak. 66 cases about COVID.
Yeah, this is an issue that was ripe last year. And it just says that this ABP plant is now running at 30% capacity or whatever, due to another outbreak. And this has been an issue. This was an issue right through a lot of last year in terms of, and then there were questions asked about the inspections, etc., that have been taking place. So look at it again, which is you would have thought we had come through. Not so much we'd learned lessons from last year. It seems possibly not. And looked at again. At the best of times, meat plants have issues regarding health and safety and need to be monitored. But in a situation like this, particularly when many of them are working flat out, and by the way, like we can't afford to have many meat plants closing because we're going to then there'll be shortages. So it's a very, very complex area.
Okay, the Irish World, edited by Bernard Purcell, who's a guest on hopefully tomorrow night if he's up. The Irish World, Taoiseach Martin, forget about holidays abroad.
Yeah, well, look, that's what he was said, and like that was the message. I don't think anyone's desperately shocked by that. Look, there's until such time as vaccines are at 70-80% level, nobody will be travelling anywhere, and that doesn't appear to be something that's going to be happening here till September, October.
Yeah.
But I just think again, which is maybe that's something that what needs to be looked into is like, what does the new normal look like? It certainly looks like an awful lot less travel, if not just next year, the year after, for a good few years ahead. And I think a lot of this stuff is going to change. I mean, those things that we took for granted over the last 5, 10, 20 years will become much rarer.
Your mother lives in Spain, Derek.
Yeah, and I was over there twice last year. I was over there, I think it was June, July, and then again in September.
Yeah.
But I mean, certainly I don't anticipate getting over to see her this side of June.
Really?
We'll revisit that. I was talking to her today about it and just saying, look, we got to be just being practical and realistic about it. So hopefully she'll be vaccinated. She's in the top percentile in terms, like she's living in Spain now over 10 years, actually 20 years. So they're permanently resident there. They pay taxes and all etc. in Spain. So she expects to be vaccinated sometime towards the end of February in Spain. Again, where she lives in that particular part of Valencia, it's extremely well managed and well monitored.
But
it's probably amongst the lowest rates in Spain.
Well, and you probably won't be able to see her now till these restrictions are lifted. Do you think? I
would imagine. I mean, certainly looks like in this basis that it'll be the best part. I would be very surprised if it's any time before June.
That's terrible, Derek.
It is, but look, it's happening to people. By the way, my mother's kind of quite calm about that because her attitude is, look, she doesn't want anyone taking chances. She's living. She has great neighbours, there's great people around her, so she just doesn't want. But again, we just be realistic. I mean, I think it's no great relief for her not to be stuck with me for any great length of time. So, but I think from that point, it's just kind of look, people are now making reasonable plans, and I think that's it. People need to know what they can reasonably expect to do.
Yeah.
But equally on the other side, which you can't just have this unremitting. It's getting worse, and it's not going to get any better.
Lord. Well, can I take this opportunity?
But I think we'd look into the kind of the meeting.
Can I take this opportunity to say hello to Derek's mother if she's watching in Spain? And hello to my own mother, actually.
Yeah.
I haven't
Look,
seen
no,
her.
it's taken me a long time to explain to her how to use Facebook.
Okay, forget Zoom.
So anyway, we'll say we'll get somebody to play the damn thing for you.
Yeah. Okay, so let's just go back.
But if you went that story again, but it also brings up the issue. Hello?
Yeah, can you hear me?
Say it again?
I just said it's extremely gloomy.
Yeah, can you?
Yeah, it was just.
It is, and I think part of that is that we were expecting by this time to feel a lot more positive. I think we were expecting by the end of January, February, that we would have been coming out of lockdown. We felt, and this is kind of what we were thinking when it maybe last October, November, December. In December, we realized, oh my God, the vaccines could be here quicker than we thought. The vaccines are here now, but they're going to be slow enough to roll out. Not incredibly slow, but they're going to be slow. The anticipation was, look, when the vaccines arrive, then once we kind of got people over the age of 70 vaccinated, we've got care homes and hospitals vaccinated, we can start opening up. That's now becoming less the case. So people are seeing the point at which things are opening up now disappearing over the horizon. So I don't think anyone reasonably expects anything before the end of March. Maybe we'll be able to sit outside and have a coffee and stuff like that, maybe. But I would suspect from listening to what NEFID is saying and listening to what other health authorities are saying, that the last thing to be opening up will be hospitality. I think you'll see kind of ordinary shops and other bits and pieces opening up.
Derek, I meant to ask you this.
I think hospitality could be the last thing to open up. Format.
Derek, I meant to ask you, like, you're a Fianna Fáiler, I mean, for many years. Your party is,
yeah.
Republicans are, I won't say the backbone of the Fianna Fáil party, but they've raised a lot of money in the past. They're part of the fabric. They're part of the culture of Fianna Fáil, I think, more than Fine Gael, certainly. Are they not just horrified at what's happening to their industry?
Certainly they are, and not just Republicans. I mean, it goes right across the board. Restaurateurs.
Yes, of course.
But hotels. So it's
right. Relationship between you guys.
Republicans in particularly what they call the wet pubs, because like they've been gone from the start, and all promises that they could open up have never materialized. I think they feel, with some justification, that the statistics never back up the claims. Now, what NEFID has said to them is, look, okay, the stats in terms of the way we compile them don't show that, but the surveys show this. And because we only track back 48 hours from the person, we can't actually show that it originally came from. So there's that difficulty. But the problem with it is, what industry will be left at the end of this? I mean, there will be no tourist industry in Ireland next year. There will be this year. There'll be no foreign tourists coming into Ireland this year. So hotels, bars, restaurants, coffee shops, whatever time they open, are going to struggle. And I don't think we've fully dealt with the fact that when we do get through this, and at the end of it, just how bad a lot of the indigenous economy, just what poor shape a large portion of the indigenous economy will be in.
But a lot of the skeptics would say this is self-inflicted, particularly in the
well, the skeptics. But the problem is the skeptics can say that, but the problem is they've no evidence and they've nothing to back it up. They're going to say, well, look, they say they would turn around and say, well, look, we think this should have been happening. So far, in terms of transmissibility, we certainly look at the new variants, that the high transmissibility rates for them, like where this has gone, we've gone from 200 to 300 cases a day to 6,000, 9,000 a day, back down to 2,000, now down to the mid thousands. But like there is a high transmissibility of this, and that's just you can't get beyond that. Okay. And therefore, social interaction is an issue.
Okay. Derek, I'm not trying to be rude. I just want to move on because we've got to do. We'll have to do the papers. Thank you, though, Derek. Sorry, I hope I'm not being rude.
Oh no.
This is quite a good photograph, actually, about the hidden effects of the pandemic.
Again, and I think this is something that I think possibly we haven't been focusing on enough in this country, probably in lots of places. And we're underestimating the amount of long-term damage this is going to do in terms of people. We can't socialize. We're social animals. We are built for interaction. We are built. How do I put it delicately? I would not want to be a 17 or 18-year-old now who was supposed to be going out and finding the world last year and this year and spreading your wild oats and told, no, you don't do that. You must isolate. You must keep away. So I just think this is there is a long-term price to be paid for this.
Yeah, well, extraordinary measures require extraordinary kind of evidence. There's for a 17-year-old, chances of him or her getting it are so slim.
Well, that was, see, the thing with that was argued the case for a long time in the early stages of it, but it's now proved not the case.
Well,
I mean, the incidence rate amongst people who are younger, the death rate among people who are younger has jumped. Now, not that young, but this is the problem. But now you argued counter that case, which is, and this is where maybe kind of that the government hasn't been always consistent in its interpretation of the evidence, because the government then turns around and said, "Oh yeah, but schools are safe." And you go, well, no, I mean, that's not quite the case. I mean, like, guys, if we're saying that this is something that can be spread by younger people, and younger people need to be careful, you can't then turn around in the next breath and say, "Oh, by the way, it's totally okay to open schools."
Well,
so I think there's a greater consistency in this.
Okay, but still, people are coming into Ireland this evening, tomorrow, and have been for over a year or over the course of this pandemic. In terms of, it seems that the measures in terms of like detention are, I don't know what they're called, detention hotels or quarantine hotels.
Yeah, this thing about the quarantine hotels.
Isn't that a year late, Derek? All that sort of
stuff. I think that's the problem. Look, I mean, this is what I argued in a column last June or July.
Yeah.
Which was the measures we were doing for people coming in just never made sense. The contract tracing forms never made sense. The process in the airport arrivals never made sense. The fact that you could just walk in, walk out. The fact that 1,400 people came back from Brazil after Christmas and nobody really knows where they went to never made sense. So we've never taken the airports and the access seriously. Others have since last. Now, people come back out and say, "Well, yeah, they've been using the test, not the PCR test, the other ones, the antigen tests, which only got a certain reliability." Yeah. They've been doing temperature checks. They've been doing preloaded contract tracing forms, etc. So you filled it in online before you arrived in, and you needed a QR scan to get through. I was talking to somebody recently who's been had to travel to work to Oman. And they said when you arrived, you needed a PCR before you arrived. You got a PCR test at the airport. You had to go and self-isolate in a location previously agreed. Now, it was your location. You didn't go into a hotel. But you then got a tracking bracelet. You then got a PCR test 3 days later. If that next test was negative, then you could move around. Okay. And you could hand back the bracelet.
Okay. Oh.
If it was positive, then they went back through all your data, all your movement for the time you arrived, and now had a perfect contact tracing on you. So, like the quarantine hotels are expensive. It works at about 250. So what we're basically saying to people, yeah, if you can afford to pay $2,500, you can fly. I just think that doesn't seem like a terribly fair system.
Do they have to pay? They don't have to pay for the hotel, though.
Yeah,
they have to pay for the hotel.
That's certainly the systems I've seen. I think the one in Australia and elsewhere, that's what I've seen. So that's it. Look.
Okay.
Now again, which is like people having said that, on the outside of it, what was it? The guy Paul Mescal is out in Australia at the moment talking about he can get into nightclubs, etc. People are looking at videos. I think there's a Fianna Fáil TV references tonight on Twitter that if you look at what's happening in New Zealand, etc., that they're sort of getting back because they've had a zero COVID policy.
Yeah.
Look, none of these systems are perfect. There are checks and balances and all of this.
Even New York.
But I'm not absolutely sure that the quarantining hotel system is the one that we should be going for at this particular junction, having failed to do it 3 months ago, and certainly before Christmas.
Okay, Derek, we've got like very, very few minutes, about 3 minutes left. New Ross Standard, there's a ghost captured in snowy scenes, captivates social media.
Absolutely. I mean, I'm convinced that now. All skepticism is gone. I've seen the photograph. I've seen the grainy photograph. I believe in everything. So yeah, so get me my Ouija board. I'm out there. Yeah.
Kind of looks like the guy who slipped. Remember the famous the guy who slipped on the snow.
It just looks like he actually kind of looks like bizarrely the fellow who slipped on the ice out in the north side there a couple of years ago.
Yeah, that's what I was saying.
It looks like just pre-slide.
Yeah. Daily Telegraph, Brussels threatens to block vaccine. Concerns.
Yeah, this is the story I mentioned earlier in context of the Examiner, which is if it looks like AstraZeneca is basically churning a lot of stuff out to the UK. If the AstraZeneca EU battle faces off, then the EU is saying, listen, you can't export anything outside the EU, so there'll be no vaccine going to the UK. So this battle could really become quite heated.
Okay, that's okay. Yeah. Even an anti-Brexiteer like you, Derek, would say that's pretty petty.
I don't think it's petty. It's at the end of the day, the EU not only paid for the vaccines up front, it paid to actually help to get them produced.
No.
It's not credible for AstraZeneca to turn around and say, sorry lads, listen, we're going to put you pre-ordered, but we're going to sell it to these other people here because they're overbidding for us. So I don't think that AstraZeneca really have a leg to stand on this one. But look, we will see. Yeah.
Okay, we'll just rattle through these, Derek. No option but to hold a nerve. Matt Hancock in the Express. The NHS plays a blinder on jabs. Something about peaky blinder.
It is. The British vaccine rollout has been phenomenal over the last couple of weeks. It has been absolutely phenomenal.
Okay. UK to set up quarantine hotels in 2 weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I know the hotel they showed, I think it's a 5-star hotel. It's not bad.
Okay, migrants fear death in jails hit by disease. Detainees lack legal help in near all-day isolation. Immigration detainees. The New York Times. Ethiopia, yeah, there's strange stuff. Eritrea. Global right is triggered by assault in the US Capitol. Moderna launches vaccine trials to attack. Is this the mutant strain? This new strain? Is it?
That's one of the really bits of good news today. Yeah.
Okay.
One of the good bits of news today was that Moderna, its very conservative analysis is that its vaccine is effective against the new strains, certainly the South African strain and the UK strain, and that it's equally effective in those, which certainly was there seemed to be some concern about that last week and the week before.
Okay.
So Moderna was able to come out and say, look, no, we've done tests on this, so we're satisfied that it is just as effective.
Okay. The UK Daily Star appears more.
Wow, yeah. Right. There's no comment. There is really no comment you can make on that.
And
I would put it this way: the story on the front of the New Ross about the ghost is far more credible than this is.
Okay. Well, they said that about Trump. Derek, this is your column.
Yeah, but you have to draw the line somewhere. Even I draw the line. I mean, anyway, whatever. I'll say to be.
This is your column today.
I don't think he has that much money. Anyway, again, no to the Trump. Now that I think of it, anyway.
Okay. As Martin Trona shared island unit under a bus, the shared island unit. Who's in the shared island unit? Is that It's
a civil service. It's done between the department. It's based in the Department of Taoiseach, but it's mainly senior civil servants. But they've now brought in a group of academics, and they're taking a fairly broad spread of people. The shared island unit is a really, really good idea. It's a really good. Problem with it, as I argued last November, was that it was stymied before it got out of the traps, because basically Martin said, look, it shouldn't look at any constitutional issues. It should just look at better relationships on the island. And I just think between Brexit, between all these other pressures, between the move towards Scottish independence, you're going to have a Scottish election in next May, during which Scottish independence is going to be the primary issue. The SNP are going to walk home in that election. And I think then you're going to be moving increasingly towards they kind of great talk about Scottish independence referendum. And I just think you can't stop that conversation. I'm trying to stop a conversation. Yeah. I personally don't believe there should be a referendum for the next 8 or 9 years, 8, 9, 10 years. But I don't think we should stop any talk of it. I think we need to start preparing for it. And we start preparing for a decade earlier makes perfect sense to me.
Yeah, it seems odd.
And I just thought that was a bad idea.
Yeah, and quite insulting to, I suppose, Arlene and Michelle O'Neill, what his comments on Saturday.
Well, the strange thing, which is, I thought his interview on Saturday, and I said like that, but my starting point in this one is the great line of Sean Lemass. It's never the little too little, it's the little too much that hurts. And he just made comments he just didn't need to make. Now, it turns out they weren't correct. Now, he can argue around some margins of it, and he can argue, say, yeah, look, the COVID response in Northern Ireland has been patchy. Yes, last year there were huge arguments within the executive, and there were delays and stuff. That there were things we wish they would catch up on us with. But unfortunately, so the same applies. The contract tracing mess in Dublin Airport is also hurting Northern Ireland. They've been asking for these contract tracing forms of people. So people arriving in Dublin Airport and going north, and there's more of them doing that than there are people going through Belfast coming south. They've been asking for this since last July. And the Department of Health is basically acknowledging the letters but not doing anything about it and saying there's data protection issues, there's this issue, that issue. But look, we need to sort this out. And so it was galling for Arlene and for Michelle to listen on Saturday to hear him turning around saying, oh, by the way, the authorities in Northern Ireland aren't taking the new COVID variant seriously when they're doing more genome testing on it than we are.
Yeah,
I
right.
just thought,
Right.
why would you say that? Why would you do something like that? And then why, at a point when you have spent years trying to build trust with unionism, why would you make a throwaway comment like that? And do not recognize that when you can't just talk off the top of your head in an radio interview and not recognize there are consequences and there are people listening. And there, like, again, which is when we announced our lockdown measures in March, and again, we never pre-notified the Northern Ireland Executive Office. So the first they heard about it literally was when the media leak came out. And what we actually have mechanisms on this island to do this. We have a joint ministerial council. We have interdepartmental relationships.
You wrote that Donnelly, that his counterpart in Northern Ireland had written to him 4 times and had not received a reply.
Yeah, Robin Swan, who's the Northern Ireland Health Minister, who was he's a very moderate unionist, and he's a former leader of the Ulster Unionist Party. He said last November that he had written 4 times to Stephen Donnelly, and he couldn't get a formal response. He was just getting kind of informal acknowledgements and letters back, but not like no formal responses saying, look, we need. What is the point of you having contact tracing form in Dublin when somebody comes through Dublin Airport? They've given you a Belfast address. You know they're going to cross the border and come into Northern Ireland. Well, then shouldn't we be notified? We're the only ones who can actually make sure they're quarantining. We're the ones who need to enforce that.
Yeah.
Why won't you just send us the forms? And by the way, it should be a reciprocal arrangement. It should work both ways. And how do you achieve an all-island approach to this when it's Dublin is the one that is partially dragging your feet? Not the entire blame lies at Dublin, not the entire problem is laid here, but it is an issue. And I think it just seems like, why would you, in the middle of this row, would you light a fuse on an allegation that or a claim that was baseless about this genome testing and that they're not testing enough for the new variant? And why would you toss that into the mix?
Extremely odd.
So I just thought it was.
Okay,
I thought it was extremely odd. I thought again, which is. You don't give a 50-minute interview if you've only got 20 minutes of stuff to talk about.
Yeah.
You can't just be doing stream of consciousness stuff.
I know.
This isn't, the Taoiseach isn't doing this program. If you're going to do Brendan O'Connor, you know what you need to prepare for.
Okay.
Like, damn it, I think I actually put more preparation in for tonight.
You did. You did. You mentioned, finally, anyway, sorry, this Derek's column anyways is in today. We've literally got a minute, but I just wanted to ask you, the sun came in, 50 days of grey, OAPs to start vaccines by Valentine's Day.
That's here, is it?
Yeah, that's here. That's the sun.
Yeah, there, look, I mean, again, that leaves us about 3 to 4 weeks behind where they'll be in the north at that stage.
Right. Okay.
It's good news.
Okay.
Oh, sorry, Valentine's Day. Sorry, the 16th. Sorry, 14th. Sorry, February. Sorry, I misread that.
Yeah, February the 14th.
Okay, that's okay. Sorry, that is good news. That is good news. Sorry, I wasn't thinking that for a second. I was thinking March rather than February.
Okay. Finally, you mentioned Jim McCallum in your piece today.
Yeah.
That he had offered up better advice over the weekend. In terms of Jim, is he the stalking horse or a queeve, or in terms of leadership?
The thing about the thing about the stalking horse is the stalking horse rarely gets there.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's a stalking horse. I will go back to what I said last week in my column, which is this is not the time for anyone Fianna Fáil to be talking about the leadership, good, bad, or indifferent. Okay, this Micheál is 10 years later Fianna Fáil tomorrow or the next day or whatever. It's whatever, all there's loads of anniversaries. Until such time as COVID is dealt with, there can be no talk about the Fianna Fáil leadership, is my own personal view.
Right.
And that's what I was trying to signal last week.
Okay.
Will that be? Yes or no? I've argued since literally about a week after the election that Micheál Martin will not lead Fianna Fáil into another election. That is absolute. You can take that to the bank.
Okay.
I mean, you saw Sean Haughey confirm that, but you've seen various TDs and others confirming that. So, therefore, Fianna Fáil is going to select a leader sometime between the wet pubs reopening and things getting back to some normality here and mid-2022. What point on that scale, I don't know.
But
I would personally gamble it's probably earlier than later. But once that, but until that point comes, I wouldn't speculate. But is Jim O'Callaghan a possible player? I would be shocked if he wasn't.
Oh right, okay. I actually did mean, was he a stroking horse in the sense that he's sort of I would have thought.
I think he is. I think he is. Yeah, I think you've got 4 or 5 people at the moment. You've got Darragh O'Brien.
Yeah.
You would have, and Darragh O'Brien's already signalled his interest. You've got Jim O'Callaghan. Whether Michael McGrath, not too sure. And certainly, and Barry Cowan would be another. But I wouldn't limit it necessarily to that 4. But I think they're probably the 4. Maybe Norma Foley, depending how well she does over the next couple of weeks, if she can get through. She can get the schools back at some point. But that, I think that the jury might still be out on that one. But certainly, I think you're going to have a potential contest.
Yeah, and you didn't mention Stephen Donnelly then.
No, strange enough, I didn't.
Okay, Derek.
I wonder why.
Thanks a lot, Derek.
No problem at all.
Thank you very much. And then Derek's column is in today's paper. Thank you.
Thanks, Derek.
Thanks, Derek. Thank you very much for joining us.